Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to try and crack the code on one of the biggest challenges of getting older, losing muscle. It's something that happens to all of us, but what's really interesting is that it's also a surprise side effect of some of today's most popular medical treatments. So what can we do about it? Let's get right into it.
So first, let me tell you about a guy named GW. He's 70 years old, and for him, yard work had turned into this 2-day ordeal. But then he tried something new, and, well, everything changed. He did the entire yard, we're talking cutting, edging, the whole shebang, in just a few hours. His wife just looked at him, totally stunned. And if that wasn't enough, he then went for a 5-mile bike ride that same afternoon. Wild, right?
GW's story is awesome, for sure, but it also points to something much, much bigger. And that number you're seeing? $18 billion. That's how much age-related muscle loss costs the healthcare system in the US every single year. It's a massive, massive problem that for a long time we've just kind of accepted as inevitable.
So there's a medical term for this condition. It's called sarcopenia, and it's way more than just feeling a little weaker. I mean, listen to this. After you turn 50, you can lose up to 30% of your muscle mass every single decade. That's huge. And that decline leads directly to more falls, more broken bones, and ultimately a loss of independence for so many people.
Now, sarcopenia has been around forever, obviously, but a very modern problem has popped up that's actually making it worse for millions of people. And it's connected to those super popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs you hear so much about.
Look, there's no question these drugs work for losing weight. They're incredibly effective. But, and this is a big but, there's a major catch. A really big chunk of the weight people lose isn't just fat, it's precious lean muscle. And losing that muscle brings a whole new set of problems to the table.
So you're probably asking, why does this even happen? Well, it's kind of like a perfect storm. The drugs crush your appetite, right? So you eat less, which usually means you're not getting enough protein to keep your muscle. The weight loss itself is super fast, so your body starts panicking and burning muscle tissue for energy. And on top of all that, you might feel tired, move less. It's just a recipe for muscle wasting.
And the consequences, yeah, they're pretty serious. You lose muscle, you become more frail, you're at a higher risk of getting hurt. But here's the real kicker. Losing muscle actually slows down your metabolism, which is the very engine that burns calories. So, ironically, it makes it way harder to keep the weight off for good. And, from a vanity perspective, it can lead to that saggy, kind of deflated look because the muscle that holds everything up just isn't there anymore.
Okay, so all of this brings us to a totally new way of thinking about the problem. Instead of just throwing more building blocks at it, what if you could restore the body's original blueprints for how to build muscle? There's a product out there called Myotrol that's based on this very idea.
Okay, this slide right here, it does a great job of breaking down the difference. On the one hand, you have the traditional approach, give the body more fuel. Protein powders, amino acids, vitamins, all the building materials. But the approach on the right is completely different. It's all about providing the instructions, using genetic signals to wake up the body's own muscle-building machinery that's basically gone to sleep over the years.
Some people have even called this concept exercise in a bottle. The idea isn't that you don't have to exercise, but that you can try to copy the amazing signals and processes that get switched on in your body when you exercise or fast. It's about getting those benefits right down at the cellular level without necessarily having to run a marathon.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this supposedly work? Well, it all comes down to being able to tune the body's internal communication system right at the genetic level.
So to get this, you need to know about something called myokines. Just think of them as little text messages that your muscle cells send out. When you work out, your muscles release these little proteins. Some of them send a message that says, hey, build more muscle. While others, believe it or not, send a message that says, okay, stop, that's enough muscle.
Now this is where it gets really, really cool. This approach claims to act like a genetic traffic cop. It's trying to turn down the volume on messengers like myostatin. That's the one that puts the brakes on muscle growth. And at the exact same time, it cranks up the volume on the good guys, like irisin and BDNF, which promote muscle health and strengthen that critical connection between your nerves and your muscles. It also claims to block an enzyme that breaks down healing compounds. So it's really about fine-tuning the body's orchestra of signals.
And this genetic tuning goes even deeper. We're talking all the way down to the power source of every single one of your cells, the mitochondria.
You probably remember this from high school bio, right? Mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. They create the energy for, well, everything.
especially for our muscles. But as we get older, these little powerhouses start to get weak, and a super important fuel they need, called NAD, just starts to run low.
So the idea here is that a product like Myotrol can act like an NAD pump. As you can see, it's a pretty simple concept. First, aging weakens the mitochondria. Second, that cellular fuel, NAD, gets depleted. The claim is that this approach steps in at stage 3 to pump the system back up, giving those cellular engines a boost and refilling the fuel tank. And the result? More energy for your muscles to work, grow, and repair themselves.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. If it's really possible to tackle muscle health at this deep, fundamental level, what could that mean for how we think about aging altogether?
I love this quote from a customer named Tony because it just brings all that science back down to a real human feeling. It's not about myostatin or NAD, it's about having the energy and the stamina to do the things you love. It's about that feeling of, wow, I could just keep going.
So the real key takeaway here is that this isn't about just one small benefit. It's about a whole system approach. The inventor of this technology uses this great analogy. He says it's like trying to turn a giant cruise ship. It doesn't happen in an instant, but by slowly, gently correcting the course at the genetic level, the claim is that you can change the entire direction of the ship away from decline and back towards a more youthful energy.
And that leaves us with a pretty mind-blowing final thought, doesn't it? We're starting to move past just treating the symptoms of aging. We're entering a time where science is trying to actually get in there and tweak the source code. So, as we get better and better at flipping these tiny genetic switches, what is getting older even going to mean in 10, 20, or 50 years from now? It's a fascinating question, and one that makes the future look pretty exciting. Thanks for tuning in.